Hi, I'm Construction Gamer and this is my UK West Coast series on Transport Fever. This is going to be episode number 32 in the series, and in this episode we're going to extend HS2, the high-speed rail line from the West Midlands, from Lichfield up towards Crewe and onto the West Coast main line. But before I do that, I just thought I'd show you a few of the bits that I've been doing since the last episode. Now I've switched some of the trains up on HS2 a bit, so we have two types of trains which are going to serve on the HS2 line. So we have what are called the captive sets. These are, in real life, they would be, if HS2 ever gets built, 400 metre long high speed trains, which are pretty long. We don't have much like that in the UK, if any. I think on the West Coast main line, the Pendolinos, you're looking at about 260 metres, so a 400 metre long train is pretty large. The longest platform we have on the game is, let me see, 320 metres. So what I've got instead are these, which are Eurostars. They are Siemens E320s, which serve between London, St Pancras and Paris, and other stops in Europe via the Eurotunnel, of course. So these are going to be the captive sets. These are only going to operate on the high-speed line itself, so we're talking Birmingham to Old Oak Common, Leeds to Old Oak Common, Manchester to Old Oak Common, and then we're going to have some services Birmingham Leeds, Manchester Leeds, just on the high-speed network itself. And for the second type of train, we have somewhere, I don't know if there's one about, I've switched the what are called classic compatible trains, which are trains which, right, so you've got the classic compatibles, and what these are is these are trains which can travel at high speed on HS2, but they can also come off the high-speed network and they can travel at conventional speeds to stations which aren't directly on the core high-speed network itself. So this one here we've already got in place is Liverpool to Old Oak Common, and this uses part of the West Coast main line at Crewe. So conventional speeds on the conventional network, and then the existing network, and then once it gets onto HS2 it can go up to top speed. And these are going to be short because they have to fit in with existing train stations. So like I said, the longest trains we have on the West Coast main line are Pendolinos, 260 metres long or thereabouts. So the classic compatibles have to be able to fit within those stations. So these ones I'm using the AGVs for, and they will operate off of the main line. Now these E320s are very, very, very expensive to run. I think if I just bring it up here, zoom into that, we are losing 20 million, which is not too bad. It's for two trains, it's pretty horrendous, but it has come down a bit. What I've had to do, if we just bring up the unit itself, look at the details, 36,000 horsepower. Originally the mod itself actually comes with, let me just check, 56,000 horsepower, which is great. It really is rapid. It was accelerating quicker than the AVGs, getting up to about 150 miles an hour between Birmingham International and Old Oak Common, but it was just eating through money. So I've reduced the power by 20,000 horsepower, and they're still really, really expensive to run. They're still quick. So I think in real life they have about 20,000 horsepower, I think I'm right in saying. So 36 isn't too far off, and it still gives you the rapid acceleration, but the problem is they're running less than 50% full, so they are hemorrhaging money at the minute. The HS2 Old Oak Common to Liverpool services aren't doing too bad. We've got a few passengers. The only service which is doing pants is the one via Stafford, but I'll explain a little bit more in detail as we are building the line itself about these two, why there are two different services or going to Liverpool. But yeah, so that is the HS2 network where we're up to. This is Birmingham International. It's changed a little bit. I've put on, it's a bit extravagant, I think. It's not really necessary, but I think part of the plan for HS2 Birmingham International Station is for a people mover to operate between the HS2 station and Birmingham International Airport. So I've put one on. I've got these little Docklands Light Railway vehicles which just basically go round in a circle around here, and they connect up HS2, they connect up this side of Birmingham International West Coast and a couple of buses, and then it links in to the tram network and another bus stop, and obviously to the airport. I've built some buildings using the ploppable building mod just to try and generate a bit of interest and passenger numbers around this area. So if we bring the HUD back up, I mean the people mover is actually quite well used, but I think what people are doing is they're getting off a bus from Coventry, yeah, one of these Coventry shuttles, getting on the people mover and then jumping on the tram into Birmingham itself. The tram itself is actually not too bad. I think it's still making money. Trams, yes, 1.73 million, which isn't too bad for a tram service. But yeah, I just thought I'd put that in there. It just looks quite interesting. Get to use the DLRs. Not quite exactly, I don't think, what's in mind, but it just represents the little people mover that is going to be built, possibly, if HS2 does get built. I have also rearranged the buses in Rugby as well, just to try and maximise the coverage between Rugby. I'm trying to encourage some building down here, but the AI doesn't want to seem to build much down here at the minute. What I've done on a lot of these buildings is I've pressed the upgrade button and I've put the person capacity to high. I'm not sure what high actually means in terms of passenger numbers, but I'm just trying to encourage people who live here to be basically more people who live here who need to travel to work and to shops and the like, obviously connected by a bus route, and then it's connected again to Leamington Spas. A few people here. This gets quite busy. It's not too bad. And actually, if we look at this service here, the Manchester Leamington Spa, £15 million, so I'm quite pleased with that. That's pretty good. Moore Street Leamington Spa via Dorridge, and the Snow Hill Leamington Spa Express service is losing a bit of money, so that's not great, but I think we'll just leave that as it is. I could probably transport a few more of these people, but I think the problem is these aren't going on any of the trains, so these people waiting here aren't waiting to go on HS2, so I'm reluctant to transport them because I want people to be using the trains rather than the buses. Same here as well. I think these people who are waiting want to go into Rugby and then back home again, or vice versa. And if I up the number of buses, then that's more people who are going to use the bus rather than the train. I know, well, I've only recently bothered looking at the actual individual people themselves, but the move preference cheap, and then we got some move preference, he's cheap as well. Let's try and get some people who want move preference fast, so they will pay more to travel. A lot of these people who are walking into the Old Oak Common Station aren't actually going into the station, they're actually walking through it, which is a bit annoying, but it is what it is. Possibly demand might grow. We've got people who want to go, we've got some people who want to go up to Liverpool via Stafford, which is good, and we've got some people who want to go to Liverpool direct. But yeah, we definitely need more people to be using Birmingham Curzon Street to try and drop those losses. 20 million. Oof. I know, look at this, 11 million for that one, and we haven't even started going up towards Leeds and Manchester yet. Well, not Leeds, we don't go that far northeast. It is going to be up to Derby, so yeah, going to be tricky when money's dropped to 920 million, 928 million. I remember back in episode 10 to 20 we had 3 billion, so we have dropped somewhat, so we can't afford to lose too much more money in building the high speed line. But at the same time, I think the cities that we have are pretty much flatlining now. They're not going to grow too much more. Charts, I mean, it is still on an upward incline, but definitely not growing as fast as it used to be, I don't think. Even despite me trying to encourage growth with flattening and roads and things like that. But it is what it is. I think we're coming almost towards the end of this. So as long as we don't run out of money before we finish building what I want to build, then we should be alright. So I think that's enough of me talking about this. I think we should just get on now and extend the line from Lichfield up towards Crewe and onto the West Coast main line. Okie dokie, so the extension northwards going towards the northwest of England is sort of pretty much split into 3 different sections. So we've got the core high-speed network, which is going to come from an area just by Lichfield, just to the west of Lichfield, and that's going to head off in a northwesterly direction up towards Manchester and beyond. But also there is a grade separated junction which I'm building here, which takes trains off of the core network just by Lichfield and takes them across to the West Coast main line, which is in between Wolverhampton and Stafford. So basically what this does is it allows trains from the core high speed network to travel north, and then the classic compatibles can jump off the high speed track and then connect up to the West Coast main line, and then they can travel onwards up then towards Stafford. They can call it Stafford, Crewe, and I think the intention is, but it's not set in stone, is that would be a Liverpool service. So it'd be Liverpool, Crewe, no it wouldn't, it'd be Liverpool, Runcorn, Crewe, and then Stafford, and then it'd join the HS2 network at just before Lichfield. So this requires 2 separate grade separated junctions. So firstly it needs a grade separated junction for the trains to leave the HS2 network, and then a second grade separated junction on the West Coast main line, so the classic compatible trains can join the West Coast main line without really impeding the running of the line itself. Just helps cut down any potential sticking points and any potential delays. So that's 2-part grade separated spur of HS2, if you will, onto the West Coast main line. That's pretty much what I'm doing now. That's pretty straightforward. It's not always completely easy building grade separated junctions, but with that concrete bridge it's not too bad. One of the main things is trying to keep up the speeds on the turnouts on the actual points themselves. I think the best I can hope for is about 80 to 100 miles an hour on the turnouts on the junctions, but the actual line itself for the HS2 I want at least 186 miles an hour. Well, no, I don't say at least, because that's the top speed of the game, of the rails in the game, but I want to maintain 186 miles per hour. And then obviously the junctions will just have to live with a bit of a speed reduction, and the Lichfield spur onto the West Coast main line can afford to be a little bit slower. It doesn't need to be too quick. Only one problem with the game with regards to the West Coast main line is the maximum speeds. Obviously you can't set speed limits on the tracks. I don't even think there's a mod for that. So the top speed on the West Coast main line is 125 miles an hour. We're running high speed trains on them and they're not going to be slowed down. So if there's a section which is slightly faster than 125, then they will travel at that speed if they can, unless they get stuck behind another train. So that's just one little issue, I suppose, with this, but it's not really the end of the world. There aren't that many sections on the West Coast main line with speeds higher, because it is quite curvaceous and I did build the railway with the intention of pretty much limiting the speed to 125. So that's the West Coast Main Line, grade separated junction. Now you can see the West Coast trains continuing over that section of the railway to continue their journeys on the Trent Valley line. Now we're extending HS2 up north towards Stafford, well, just to the west of Stafford, so it's going to bypass Stafford now, and it's pretty much, if the intention is for it to lie in between Stafford and Stoke as it makes its approach up to Crewe. Now this bit here is just basically building a bit of straight track, but while trying to maintain the 186 miles per hour, doing a bit of smoothing as well to make the train nice and flat for the actual journey. So I'll skip ahead to the next complicated bit, which is the Crewe junction that we need to build. Okie dokie, so the line is starting to approach Crewe now, which is the next complicated section. So we've got another double set of grade separated junctions to build. Firstly, we've got to start to descend HS2 a bit to a dive, into a bit of a dive to go under Crewe, which is going to be in a tunnel. That's the core line, which then goes off towards further north to the West Coast Main Line and further north to Manchester. So it starts to dive down a bit, but before it does that, we have another spur which comes off the core network on a grade separated junction again, and this is just a little spur which goes into the southern approach to Crewe station itself. So it's another double set of grade separated junctions. So we need to nip into the West Coast Main Line a bit. Now we only need to change the up down fast lines on the West Coast Main Line, so we've obviously got an up down on HS2 and an up down which needs to tie in to the West Coast Main Line. So I'm just creating a little junction which spurs off the West Coast Main Line towards the HS2 spur, and then I'm just going to build a single track section of bridge which goes over the HS2 connection onto the West Coast Main Line. So that's just bypasses that section of track, so again we've got no conflicts going on there. Now one of the things that I'm doing with this build is doing a little tiny bit more detailing. So I'm using these retaining walls, and I've turned ground modification off, so they just create like a nice concrete wall just to hide any glitching that you might get, just to make this a little bit more detailed than any of the other builds, just to set it apart, I guess, from the other builds that we have done. It does it just hides those glitched areas and makes them look so much better. So we've got that grade separated junction. Those two sections of track you can see there, they're going to go into a tunnel and they're going to go under Crewe, and then they're going to head off in a north-easterly direction, come from underneath Crewe and then head off in a north-easterly direction up towards Manchester, where there'll be yet another spur of the network itself, one going off to the West Coast Main Line just south of Wigan, and the other going off towards Manchester Airport, and then eventually off into Manchester itself. So we're pretty much finished with this section of the build. The journey we're going to be doing today is going to be the classic compatible service from Liverpool calling Runcorn Crewe, and then it's going to join the HS2 network at this junction which we've just built, and then it's going to go full speed all the way down to Old Oak Common with nothing stopping it, nothing getting in the way. It's not going to call up Birmingham International. It might do, the real thing might do, but there are no firm kind of train service plans yet, so I'm just going to work off the information that's available. So there is a second service which is going to be Liverpool calling Runcorn Crewe, and then it's going to go to Stafford and it's going to join the West Coast Main Line at the Lichfield junction that we just built. But for this we are just going to go on the journey from Liverpool direct, so we can take a nice journey on one of the AGVs all the way down to Old Oak Common at high speed. Gets a bit, the frame rate does drop a bit as we go through Birmingham International, because obviously we've got a built up area, and then it is travelling at high speed, so it does struggle a bit, but Hopefully I should be able to edit that out with the actual time-lapse feature. So that is it for today. We've built the section between Lichfield and Crewe, and the next episode will be the Manchester section and the section up to the West Coast Main Line at Wigan. So I'm going to leave it there for today, and I'm going to say until next time, bye bye.